What makes a soldier ignore an order that could save her career, just to save a friend's life? The night sky over Kandahar burned like a wound. Tracer fire lanced across the dark, red streaks slicing through dust and smoke as heavy rounds pounded the earth. A disabled Humvee lay on its side, metal shrieking each time a bullet struck. Inside, Captain Sarah Reed pressed her back to the cold steel, checking the weight of her M4A1. 4 rounds left. A pistol on her thigh, 1 full magazine. Not nearly enough against the dozen insurgents tightening the noose. Her voice stayed steady, though her pulse was ragged in her ears. "Command, this is Reaper 6. We are pinned down at Grid Echo 7. Multiple casualties. Request immediate air support and extraction." Static, then the clipped response she dreaded. "Reaper 6, this is Command. Negative on air support. All forces fall back to Rally Point Delta. Immediate withdrawal, confirm." Her jaw locked. Rally Point Delta was 3 clicks southwest, safe, but it meant leaving Sergeant Turner's squad behind, still pinned in the second Humvee. Sarah could see the muzzle flashes where they fought, where her brothers bled. She pressed her comms again, urgency in her tone. "Command, Turner's team is still engaged. Request permission to extract before withdrawal." A colder voice cut in, the unmistakable authority of Colonel Richard Harrison. "Captain Reed, this is a direct order. All units converge at Rally Point Delta immediately. The operation is compromised. Confirm your compliance." Her gut clenched. 16 years in uniform taught her when orders carried more than their surface meaning. And Harrison's voice had that edge, the kind that said something bigger was at play. But all she saw was Turner, his silhouette against firelight. Turner, who had pulled her through Ranger School, who had bled with her in Iraq, who had been her quiet compass when the desert heat threatened to break her. "Leave no one behind." The motto drilled into every Ranger's bones, and now Command was telling her to abandon that promise. Her mind flashed back to whispers before the mission. Harrison arguing with his intelligence officer behind closed doors. "The package is the priority," he'd said. "Everything else is secondary." At the time, Sarah hadn't understood. Now, as rounds whined overhead, the words felt like a blade twisting in her chest. "Command," she said, her voice tightening. "I cannot comply. I'm moving to extract Turner's team." "Reed, you are disobeying a direct order." She ripped the earpiece from her head. The line went dead, but the decision was alive in her blood. Sarah exhaled slowly. The familiar calm before a raid wrapped around her, dulling the edges of fear. She secured her combat knife, checked the tourniquet at her side, clipped her ACOG back onto the rifle. Precision movements, rituals that steadied her hands. "Jackson," she called to the 2 Rangers crouched with her. "Cover me. 1 mag each, controlled bursts. I'm going for Turner." Jackson, barely 22, blood streaming from a cut across his forehead, stared at her wide-eyed. "Captain," Command ordered. "And I'm ordering advance." Her voice was steel. "You hear my signal, suppress east side, 3-round bursts, conserve ammo." A beat of silence, then 2 nods, trust. Sarah counted down in her head. 5 seconds of sprint, drop, scan, move again, the rhythm of survival. She burst from the Humvee's shadow into the open, boots tearing through gravel. Bullets cracked past her ears, tracers slicing the air. She dropped to prone, steadied her breathing. Another sprint. Another drop. Her body moved like the dozens of night raids she'd led before, but tonight every step felt heavier, like the ground itself wanted to keep her back. She slid behind a broken stone wall, peering through night vision. 8 insurgents clustered, AKs barking at Turner's Humvee. Another 4 circling behind, trying to box them in. Her training sharpened the world into targets and priorities. One man, taller than the rest, barked orders with his rifle, coordinating their movements. The leader, primary. Her breath slowed, the crosshairs steadied. 1 shot, his chest snapped back. 2nd shot, another man dropped before he even turned. 3rd, A figure pivoting toward her position crumpled mid-step. 3 down before they knew death had entered their flank. The survivors scattered for cover, shouts rising in Pashto. Sarah keyed into the team frequency. "Turner, this is Reed. Diversion east. Move your wounded to the riverbed, 30 seconds." No response on the net, but she saw shadows moving from Turner's Humvee. They'd heard. She fired her last round, transitioned to her pistol, felt its solid weight steady her chest. 2 more insurgents fell. The chaos shifted, the enemy turning to her. She moved low, fast, heart hammering as the night erupted. Wildfire cracked the stones around her, but their aim was blind fury. She reached the riverbed just as Turner and 2 rangers half-carried a third, blood soaking his leg. Turner's face was cut and grim, recognition flashing in his eyes. Sarah Command said, "I don't leave my people behind." She checked the wounded Ranger Collins, gunshot through the thigh. He could move with help. Turner nodded, breath ragged. "Plan. Riverbed southwest. Hills for cover, 3 clicks, I'll take point, your rear." And so began 47 minutes of living in the shadows between life and death. Sarah led them through gullies and ridges she'd memorized from maps, every contour etched in her preparation. Twice they avoided patrols. Once she silenced 2 fighters with her knife, efficient and cold. Her hands didn't shake, only her heart did afterward when she saw Collins grit his teeth through agony just to keep moving. They reached Rally Point Delta at 2:47. Helicopters churned the air, rotors thundering salvation. Medics rushed forward, pulling Collins onto a stretcher. Colonel Harrison was there, suit of shadows against the floodlights. His jaw clenched when he saw Turner alive beside Sarah. "Captain Reed, you disobeyed a direct order." She met his eyes, her face unreadable. Rangers don't abandon their own. For just a flicker, relief crossed Harrison's face, then hardened again. "You compromised the mission objective. There will be consequences." Sarah's lips parted to answer when the night behind them bloomed in fire. Explosions shook the valley, lighting the sky where Turner's Humvee had been. Air support, suddenly available now that no Rangers remained in its shadow. Her stomach dropped. Harrison hadn't support because it wasn't there. He'd it because Turner's men had been expendable. She looked past Harrison. Captain Vega stood there, Harrison's intelligence officer, a man Sarah had fought beside in Mosul. His eyes met hers. A silent question passed, but Vega looked away, his expression flat, though his eyes betrayed a trace of conflict. Sarah said nothing. But in that moment, with the flames of betrayal lighting the sky, she knew her war was no longer just with enemies across the valley. It was with the people behind her own orders. That night would follow her for years. Soldiers would whisper about the ghost of Kandahar, the captain who had command and walked men out alive. But ghosts don't get medals. Ghosts get silence. 6 years later, on a quiet university campus, Sarah Reed walked alone beneath amber, her leather jacket zipped against the autumn chill. 44 now, her stride carried the muscle memory of war, scanning shadows, every step measured. To passing students, she was just another visitor. But inside, she was a woman without a war, a soldier without a unit, a ghost waiting for meaning. And meaning was about to find her, when she least expected it. Because in the glow of a campus parking lot, 4 young men cornered 3 women against a car. And Sarah Reed, the woman who wants the army itself to keep a promise, felt the old calm return as she stepped forward and said, "Hey, leave them alone. What can 4 reckless men do against 1 woman trained for war?" Sarah's voice cut through the autumn night, calm, controlled, measured like a warning bell. "Leave them alone." The 4 young men turned, their bodies stiff with alcohol and arrogance. Their leader, backwards baseball cap, expensive jacket, a swagger that stank of entitlement, looked her up and down. His laugh dripped contempt. "Mind your business, lady. Keep walking." Sarah didn't move. 15 feet away, her stance shifted almost imperceptibly, weight balanced, hands loose, shoulders square. The kind of stance only combat veterans or professional fighters recognized. The kind that said, "I'm ready to end this in a single breath." "I'm making it my business," she said, voice level, eyes unblinking. "Walk away now and nobody gets hurt." The baseball cap sneered, nudging the one in a Letterman jacket. "She wants to play hero." His buddies chuckled nervously, mistaking Sarah's composure for weakness. One of the women trapped against the car spoke up, her voice trembling. "Please just call security. Don't come over here." But another woman, taller, short dark hair, eyes sharp even in fear, watched Sarah with unsettling intensity. Unlike her friends, she didn't look panicked. Her posture hinted at balance, her breathing controlled, almost prepared. Sarah noted it in a blink, training, not civilian, but she kept her focus on the men. "Last chance," she warned, eyes locked on the leader. "Walk away." They laughed, because what could one woman, mid-40s, outnumbered, possibly do? Baseball cap stepped forward, hand darting out to grab her jacket. His hand never touched her. Sarah's body moved like water. Left hand deflected his arm, right elbow slammed just below his ear. A precise strike to a pressure point. He crumpled instantly, unconscious before he hit the pavement. 8 seconds of silence followed. The parking lot seemed to stop breathing. 3 men stared at their leader lying motionless. The women froze. Even Sarah stood still, her breathing steady, her expression unreadable. What did you do to him?" Letterman jacket stammered, his bravado leaking into fear. "He'll wake up in a few minutes," Sarah said conversationally, "hopefully with better manners." The balance of power shifted instantly. 4 against 3 had become 3 against 1, except the one moved like a ghost. The third man, tall and wiry with bleached hair, snarled. "It's just one woman." He rushed, reckless. Sarah, redirecting his momentum with surgical precision. A twist of his arm, a shift of her hips, and he was face down on the asphalt, arm pinned painfully behind his back. "Tap," she said calmly. I tap," he gasped, slapping the ground. She released him without a word. He rolled away, clutching his arm, eyes wide with disbelief. 2 down, 2 to go. The last pair exchanged panicked looks. Letterman raised his hands. "Look, maybe we can just walk away." "The harm was done when you cornered them," Sarah replied evenly. "You don't get to choose the terms now." The fourth, stocky with a shaved head, cracked. He bolted toward campus, disappearing into the night. Sarah let him go. A runner wasn't worth the chase. Letterman tried next, feinting left before sprinting right. Sarah intercepted in one fluid movement, her hand gripping his jacket as her hip turned. A throw so smooth it seemed effortless. He landed flat on his back, the wind driven from his lungs. "Stay down," she said. He stayed down. Sarah pulled her phone from her jacket and dialed, her voice steady. "Campus security, multiple attackers, 3 female students, send units now." Sirens wailed in the distance within minutes. Sarah turned toward the women. 2 clung to each other, their fear spilling into grateful tears. But the third, the one with sharp eyes, watched Sarah not with fear or relief, but with curiosity. "You military?" the young woman asked quietly, once her friends weren't listening. Sarah held her gaze, unreadable. "Just self-defense classes." The girl almost smiled, as if recognizing the lie, before she composed herself again. Flashing lights arrived. Campus security chief Michael Turner stepped out, broad-shouldered, gray-haired, the calm posture of someone who had seen combat before. His gaze swept the scene. 3 subdued men on the asphalt, 3 shaken women, and 1 woman standing with hands loose at her sides, utterly calm. "You the one who called this in?" Turner asked. "Yes, sir," Sarah replied. Her words were crisp, efficient, the kind soldiers used in after-action reports. "These men attacked the women. I intervened." Turner studied her, suspicion tugging at memory. He'd seen that bearing before, alert, precise, never relaxed but never panicked. Not civilian, not by a long shot. "ID?" he asked. She handed it over. His eyes landed on the name, Sarah Reed. Something clicked. 6 years ago, whispers from Afghanistan, a ranger officer who orders. A legend traded like contraband among contractors and operators alike. The ghost of Kandahar. Turner's eyes narrowed, studying her. "You're her, aren't you?" Sarah's face remained unreadable. "That was a long time ago, Chief." The three women approached then. The brunette, the same sharp-eyed one, spoke first. "This woman saved us. Those men, they wanted more than money." Her voice faltered, but her eyes didn't. "They asked about Dr. Slab." Sarah caught the shift. Not a random assault, a mission. Turner heard it too, his posture stiffened. "You're sure?" The girl nodded. "They wanted access to her research." Research, surveillance, security system. Sarah's instincts flared. As the perpetrators were cuffed and led away, one of them, baseball cap, now conscious, lifted his head towards Sarah. His lips curled into something too confident for a man under arrest. "You have no idea what you just did," he hissed. "He's watching. You just made yourself a target." The officers pulled him away, but Sarah caught the words. So did Turner. "What was that about?" Turner asked. "Nothing good," Sarah muttered. Evidence bags came next. One officer handed Turner 3 stolen student ID cards. Each had notes scrawled on them. Access to office. Sarah's chest tightened. This wasn't about assault. It was about infiltration. Turner's eyes lifted. "Doctor, cybersecurity professor, former NSA." His tone was grim. "This isn't a campus crime anymore." Sarah said nothing, but inside her pulse slowed. The same calm she felt in Kandahar. A storm was forming, and once again she was standing in its eye. Later, as she walked back to her car, she glanced over her shoulder. The sharp-eyed student, Madison Williams, watched her leave. Not with the awe of someone rescued, but with the calculation of someone who had just identified a piece on a board. And unseen from a nearby window, another figure lifted a camera, tracking Sarah's departure. He spoke into a secure phone. "Confirmation. The ghost is on site. Protocol is active." Sarah had no way of knowing it yet, but Kandahar hadn't stayed buried in Afghanistan. It had followed her home. And tonight, it had just found her again. What if the enemy wasn't across the ocean, but standing behind the podium giving you orders? Campus security chief Michael Turner didn't believe in legends. He'd buried too many good men to waste time on ghost stories whispered in mess halls. But the moment Sarah Reed handed over her ID, the moment her eyes locked with his, he knew the whispers had been true. The ghost of Kandahar was real, and she was standing in his parking lot, in jeans and a leather jacket, like war had never left her bones. Turner's gut told him something bigger was unfolding. He'd been a Marine MP in Desert Storm, then law enforcement for decades. He knew when violence was random and when it was tactical. The parking lot assault wasn't kids gone wild. It was a probe. And the target wasn't just those students. It was something or someone else. He walked Sarah aside while officers processed the scene. "You're not just some passerby, are you?" His voice was quiet, edged with suspicion. Sarah's face stayed blank. "I was taking a shortcut." Turner studied her. Calm, precise, too exact. He'd seen plenty of ex-military fade into civilian life, but none carried themselves like she did. She moved like someone who still expected ambushes at every corner. "I've heard stories," Turner pressed. "Afghanistan, Kandahar 2018, a ranger captain who orders." Sarah's jaw tightened. Stories are just stories. But the flicker in her eyes gave her away. Before Turner could push further, one of his officers hurried over holding an evidence bag. Inside, 3 stolen student IDs, sticky notes attached. Scribbled words, access to office. Turner swore under his breath. He knew that name. Doctor, head of cybersecurity research, former NSA analyst, government contracts on her desk. This wasn't a mugging, Turner muttered. No, Sarah agreed. Her voice was flat, but her stomach turned. The same gut feeling she'd had in Afghanistan when missions wrapped themselves in half-truths and shadows. Turner studied her again, then said, I could use someone like you, temporary consultant, until we figure out what's happening. Sarah shook her head. I don't do that anymore. But Turner didn't believe her. Nobody walked away completely. Sarah's apartment was modest. Neutral walls. No photographs. The only hint of who she'd been was a Ranger tab nailed discreetly beside the door. The rest, her medals, her ribbons, her shadow boxes, lay buried in a box she rarely opened. She poured a glass of bourbon and sat by the window, staring into the dark. The campus parking lot replayed in her mind like a mission debrief. The precision of the attack, the strange composure of that one student, Madison, and the words from the arrested boy, you just made yourself a target. Her phone vibrated, unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Reed. The voice was male, middle-aged, clipped, military precision. Captain Reed, or should I say the ghost of Kandahar. Her body stiffened, instincts flaring. Who is this? Someone who knows what happened that night, the voice said calmly. Someone who knows why Colonel Harrison ordered you to abandon Turner's squad. Someone who knows what he was protecting. The name landed like a blow. Harrison, the man whose order she'd ignored, the man who buried her career. You've got 10 seconds to identify yourself, Sarah warned. Doctor is in danger. What happened tonight was only the beginning. They want her research project. Sarah's chest tightened. She'd never heard the name, but the way he said it, the weight, the secrecy told her it mattered. What? A domestic surveillance program. Makes the Patriot Act look like child's play. Stumbled on it while building recognition algorithms for campus security. Harrison and his people have been trying to silence her ever since. Sarah said nothing. She learned to let silence force truth from the other side. The voice chuckled. You're the only one who disobeyed orders to save lives. I need you again. You'll get an email in 5 minutes. Then decide if you're really retired. The line went dead. Sarah sat still, bourbon untouched, heart beating slow and heavy. Her eyes fell on a wooden box on the shelf. Inside, a dog tag, Private Collins, the young soldier she dragged out of Kandahar, blood soaking his uniform. He survived but lost a leg. Before discharge, he'd pressed his tag into her palm, so you'll remember it was worth it. The email came, a secure video file. Sarah played it, her screen filling with surveillance footage, college campuses, classrooms, dorms. Students tracked by algorithms, their movements mapped, conversations tagged, private lives reduced to data points. The final frame chilled her blood. Senator James Marshall shaking hands with Richard Harrison, her old commander, now in a tailored suit, CEO of a private security giant. Behind them, another face she knew too well. Vega. Her old partner, the man who against her. Her phone rang again, this time Turner's number. Reed, it's Turner. Doctor's office was broken into tonight. Nothing stolen. But when we processed the kid you dropped in the lot, Marshall, he had a secure comms device. Military encryption. He made one call after you left. Who to? Sarah asked, her voice low. A shell company, Security Solutions. Ever heard of them? Her silence was answer enough. Meet me at my office tomorrow, Turner said. We need to talk. Sarah stared at the dark screen long after the call ended. Harrison, Vega, and a senator's son carrying military hardware on a college campus. The battlefield had shifted. Kandahar wasn't finished with her. And this time, the war wasn't half a world away. It was here, on American soil. The next morning dawned gray, the wind sharp. Sarah arrived at campus security at 700 sharp, the old habits unshakable. Turner met her with coffee and grim eyes. On his desk, 3 folders. "First problem," he said. "Marshall was released at 200 bail. His father pulled strings." "Political cover," Sarah said. "Exactly. Second, those women from last night. They all work in Doctor's lab, not random targets." Sarah flipped the files open. Sophie Carter, Madison Williams, bright students, AI pattern recognition, the kind of minds a surveillance program would need. Her eyes lingered on Madison. Too clean, too perfect, academic records that felt more constructed than lived. "And the third?" Sarah asked. Turner slid photographs across the table. Lab, break-in, high-end intrusion tools, government contractor methods. Sarah's stomach dropped. Turner looked at her. "You've got history with Harrison, don't you?" Sarah's eyes hardened. "He was my commander. He ended my career." Turner leaned back. "The same man now running one of the biggest security firms in the country, and he's here, on our campus." As if summoned by the words, the door to his office opened later that morning. And there he was. Colonel Richard Harrison, 6 years older but still the same hawk eyes, the same rigid posture, except now he wore a $1,000 suit instead of fatigues. For a second his mask slipped when he saw her, then he smiled thinly. "Captain Reed, what an unexpected surprise." "It's just Sarah now," she replied evenly. "I'm not in the service anymore, thanks to you." Harrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. Regrettable but necessary. "What was necessary?" she asked coldly. "Leaving Turner's squad to die." Harrison's eyes flickered. Then he leaned closer. "Walk away, Sarah. You always were too stubborn for your own good. This isn't your fight anymore." Before she could answer, a man stepped from behind him. Broader now, scar across his jaw, eyes as cold as she remembered. "Vega." "Hello, Ghost," he said softly. The room seemed to shrink. Sarah met his gaze without flinching, still following orders. His expression shifted, something flickering behind the steel. Regret, anger, she couldn't tell. "This isn't Afghanistan," Vega said. "You're not equipped for this." Sarah's voice was ice. "We'll see." For the first time in years she felt it, the weight of old ghosts pressing on her chest. Harrison, Vega, Kandahar, all standing here, alive and dangerous, with something bigger than anyone around them understood. And she realized then, she wasn't just caught in their orbit. She was the reason they were here. What happens when the truth you buried comes back to life and asks for answers you're not ready to give? Doctor's office smelled faintly of burnt coffee and paper. The walls were lined with books, journals, awards from agencies that no longer claimed her. Behind her, glass windows framed a campus that looked blissfully ignorant of the storm now pressing against its edges. Sarah stood inside with Turner at her side, her body still humming from the encounter with Harrison and Vega in the hallway. The air felt too still, too brittle, like it could shatter at any second. Sat behind her desk, silver-streaked hair tied back, glasses perched low on her nose. But her eyes, sharp, restless, too awake, told Sarah she hadn't slept much in weeks. "Mr. Reed," began, then caught herself. "Captain Reed." "Just Sarah," she corrected. Studied her for a beat, then nodded. "I'm told you intervened last night. My students, they owe you their lives." "They needed help," Sarah said simply. "That's all." Leaned forward. "You're not campus security, so why were you there?" Sarah's gaze didn't waver. Wrong place, right time. Turner cut in before the silence stretched. "Doctor, we need to know why those men targeted your students, why your office was broken into, and why Colonel Harrison is suddenly walking these halls." At the names, jaw tightened. Her fingers tapped against the desk, then stilled. "You know my research," she said finally. "Pattern recognition algorithms, originally designed for campus safety. Early warning systems, To identify threats before violence happens. That was the idea. Predictive policing, Turner muttered. Similar, but with safeguards, corrected quickly. It was never designed for surveillance. Until 3 months ago, when I discovered unauthorized modifications in our system. Sarah's chest tightened. What kind of modifications? Turned her monitor, typing rapidly. Code filled the screen, lines of numbers, symbols, patterns that meant little to Turner but made Sarah's stomach twist. This version doesn't just identify potential threats, explained. It builds complete profiles, political leanings, social networks, relationships, private conversations. It turns a campus into a fishbowl. Total information awareness, Turner said grimly. Exactly, and worse, it learns. It predicts behaviors before they happen, who might protest, who might organize, who might resist. Sarah exhaled slowly. The weight of it pressed against her ribs like armor too tight. She said. Nodded. They've been funneling money through shell corporations to fund the modifications. Senator Marshall is pushing their contracts nationwide. His son's involvement, well, you saw it yourself. Sarah's jaw flexed, and Harrison hesitated, then looked her in the eye. He threatened me this morning, told me to stop digging, said my funding was frozen, that my career and my students would suffer if I kept pushing. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Sarah broke it. He's not just protecting contracts, he's covering something else, something older. Turner's gaze shifted to her. Kandahar. The word hung in the room like a wound reopened. Sarah's hands tightened into fists. Frowned. Kandahar. Sarah's throat felt dry. For 6 years she'd carried the memory like shrapnel, buried deep, sharp enough to bleed if touched. She'd sworn never to speak of it, but Turner's eyes pressed her, and need was clear. She drew a slow breath. Our mission wasn't what they told us. Officially, it was a rescue op, a downed crew, but the compound we hit, it was Taliban. It was a communications site, sophisticated, guarded by fighters who were too well-trained, too well-equipped, not locals. And inside. Her voice faltered. The memory burned too bright. She steadied herself. Inside was a man, an Iranian physicist. Fared, officially, he'd died months earlier. In truth, he'd defected. The CIA was extracting him. Our mission was cover. Harrison knew. He also knew the ambush was coming. That's why he ordered us to withdraw. He didn't want witnesses to what we found. Leaned forward, eyes wide. And what did you find? Sarah's jaw clenched. Prototype tech, early versions of your algorithms, not just for security, for control. Turner's face went pale. His voice was tight. My brother, William, was with Turner's squad. You're saying he died because Harrison sacrificed them to cover up a defector and stolen tech? Sarah's chest ached. Yes. The silence that followed was heavier than any gunfire she'd endured. Turner stared at the wall, jaw trembling, then stood abruptly, packing. His fists clenched at his sides, eyes red but unyielding. All these years they told me it was routine, that he died in action. And you, he stopped, looking at Sarah, voice breaking with restrained fury. You knew. Her voice cracked low. I tried to save him. He was hit. I carried him as far as I could. He didn't make it to extraction. I've lived with that every day since. Turner's chest heaved. For a moment, Sarah thought he might break. Instead, he turned away, pressing his palms against the desk, shoulders shaking. His voice broke the silence. So's empire is built on tech stolen from an Iranian scientist, tech buried in Kandahar, and now they're here, trying to finish what they started. Before Sarah could answer, a knock at the door startled them. One of Turner's officers, face tense. Chief, urgent call. Madison Williams. She was attacked outside the science building. She's at the medical center now. Sarah and Turner exchanged a glance. Madison. The medical center smelled of antiseptic and quiet dread. Sarah entered the exam room behind Turner. Madison sat on the bed, an ice pack pressed to her cheek, bruising already blooming along her jaw. Despite the swelling, her eyes were steady. "Miss Williams," Turner said gently, "how are you feeling?" "I've been better," she said dryly, "but nothing's broken." Sarah's gaze swept her injuries. The bruising on her arms wasn't random. They were restraint holds, military grips. Whoever had attacked her wasn't some drunk student. "What happened?" Turner asked. Madison's eyes flicked to Sarah, studying her, then back. "I was leaving the lab. A man in a maintenance uniform followed me into the stairwell. Didn't fit right. He asked about doctor's research, about the algorithms. When I refused, he grabbed me. Used to hold, military." Sarah's voice was quiet. "You recognized it?" Madison hesitated, then rolled up her sleeve. More bruises, precise, controlled. "I recognized the counter too. That's how I got free." Turner frowned. Not typical student knowledge. Madison met Sarah's eyes. There was a pause, a silent exchange. Then she reached into her pocket, pulled out a small leather wallet and flipped it open. "FBI credentials." "Madison Williams," she said. "Field analyst. Embedded to monitor national security threats in academic research programs." Turner blinked, gasped. Sarah's face stayed unreadable, though her pulse kicked harder. "Your FBI," Turner said. "Yes, I was assigned 8 months ago. We'd been tracking unusual funding in AI surveillance programs. Fingerprints were all over lab. My job was to identify who was pulling the strings." His face flushed. "You lied to me. You were never my student." "I'm sorry," Madison said softly, "but I had to stay close to the research." Sarah's voice cut in. "Your attacker mentioned a name, didn't he?" Madison's eyes locked with hers. "Yes, Vega. He said Vega wanted the data." The name sliced through the room like a blade. Sarah's chest burned. Vega, her old partner, the man who'd betrayed her testimony. His hand trembled as she set down the ice pack. "Then they're moving fast. They want my research before we can stop them." Turner's radio crackled. His officer's voice was urgent. "Chief, we've got multiple unmarked vehicles outside the administration building. Men unloading equipment into the main server room. They're not waiting for authorization." Turner swore. "They're taking over the campus systems." Sarah's instincts sharpened. If they gets full algorithms, project goes nationwide. Stood resolve cutting through her fear. "Not if we get to my private lab first. I've got an air-gapped copy. Clean, hidden, we can still protect it." Turner looked to Sarah. "Can you get her there?" Sarah's expression hardened. "Yes, but if Vega's running this op, he'll anticipate us." Madison straightened, fire behind her bruised eyes. "Then we'll have to be smarter." Sarah exhaled, feeling the familiar calm of mission focus settle into her bones. For 6 years she'd lived as a civilian, pretending her war was over. But looking around at Turner's grief, his determination, and Madison's quiet resilience, she knew the truth. Her war had never ended. It had just come home. What if the person you trusted most became the blade pointed at your throat? The night air outside the medical center was sharp with the hum of unseen engines. Sarah scanned the parking lot before letting Madison step into the shadows with her. Turner lingered near the entrance, radio pressed to his ear, face grim. 3 SUVs, unmarked. They offloaded equipment into the admin building. "My men are trying to hold the perimeter, but these guys," Turner's voice lowered. "They move like contractors, not cops, not college kids, real operators." Sarah's stomach clenched. Vega's men. Hugged her satchel close, voice tight. "If they control the servers, they'll scrub every trace of the original code, then replace it with their modified build. We'll lose everything." "Then we don't let them finish," Sarah said. Her tone was calm, but inside her pulse was steady steel. Turner gave her a long look. "If this goes bad, campus PD won't be enough. I'll call in state troopers." "They won't get here in time," Sarah replied. She glanced at Madison. "We move now. Lab, where is it?" adjusted her glasses, her voice shaky but determined. North Annex, basement level, no signage. It was meant to be a contingency site. Few people even know it exists. Sarah nodded. Good, we go quiet. No lights, no chatter, we move like shadows. Madison gave a small, knowing smile. You're enjoying this again, aren't you? Sarah didn't answer, but she felt it, the old rhythm, the calm that came when chaos pressed in. For years she'd fought against that part of herself. Now it was back, breathing through her veins like it had never left. They cut across the campus under a half-moon sky. The buildings loomed silent, but Sarah's instincts screamed. Every corner, every shadow, every roofline, she scanned them all, hunting for movement. At the engineering quad, she raised a hand. The group froze. Ahead, two figures in maintenance uniforms patrolled with radios, rifles tucked under tool bags. Too precise, too alert. Cover blown, Sarah whispered. Madison's jaw tightened. Options. Wait until they pass, Sarah murmured. Then we move. But the decision was stolen. One of the men turned unexpectedly, his gaze catching theirs across the dim courtyard. His hand darted to his radio. Sarah fired first, suppressed pistol, one shot, he dropped silently. The second man spun, weapon rising, only for Madison to slam him against the wall, her elbow cracking into his ribs, disarming him with surprising precision. Stared wide-eyed. You're very well trained for an FBI analyst. Madison gave a tight grin, shoving the man unconscious to the ground. I didn't lie about the analyst part, just left out the combat training. Sarah said nothing, but the thought pressed cold in her chest. She's good, too good for just bureau work. They moved faster after that. Sarah pushed them through alleys, stairwells, cutting every blind angle she could. Twice more they spotted Vega's men sweeping the campus. Each time Sarah avoided them, threading the group through shadows like a hunter stalking prey. Finally, the North Annex loomed, an older building, forgotten by the shine of new construction. Led them down a narrow stairwell into the basement, past a locked steel door. She keyed in a code, then pressed her palm to a biometric scanner. The lock hissed open. Inside, the lab hummed with low power. Rows of computers, racks of servers, workbenches cluttered with tools and prototypes. This is it, whispered. The clean copy, air-gapped, completely isolated. If we can secure it, loses leverage. Sarah scanned the room. How long to pull the data? Moved quickly to a terminal. 5 minutes for the transfer, then we'll need to destroy the rest. 5 minutes we don't have, Sarah muttered. Her instincts prickled. As if on cue, the lights flickered. The hum of servers faltered, then roared again. And Sarah heard it, boots pounding above, the heavy rhythm of men moving as one. Madison swore under her breath. They tracked us. Sarah's calm never wavered. Barricade the door. They shoved benches, racks, anything they could against the entrance. Fingers flew across the keyboard, her breath sharp. Transfer started, 3 minutes. Sarah checked her pistol. 2 mags left. A knife on her hip. Not enough against the storm coming down the stairs. Madison crouched beside her, chambering around. You don't trust me, she said quietly. Sarah's eyes stayed on the door. I don't trust anyone who hides who they are. You did the same, Madison shot back. Sarah didn't answer, because the truth cut too deep. The first hit came hard, ramming against the steel door, rattling the barricade. A voice outside shouted orders, muffled but commanding. Sarah recognized it instantly. Vega. Her chest tightened. She could almost see him through the steel. His voice was colder, harder, but unmistakable. Sarah, he bellowed, you're making a mistake. Step aside. We're not here to hurt you. Her throat burned. You already did. The second hit slammed the door open an inch, rattling their barricade. Cried out but kept typing. Madison braced her rifle at the gap. 2 minutes, shouted. The door groaned again. Sarah pressed her back against the wall, pistol ready. Her heart was steady, her breathing slow. She'd been here before, surrounded, outnumbered. And she knew what came next. The final crash sent the door flying open, barricade collapsing. 4 men stormed through, rifles up. Sarah's shots cracked fast, 2 down before they could fire. Madison dropped a third with surgical precision. The 4th managed to squeeze off a burst, round sparking against the lab wall, before Sarah's knife found his throat. "More coming," Madison warned, pulling back into cover. Sarah's ears rang with Vega's voice from the hall. "Stop this, Sarah. You think you're saving anyone. You're just exposing yourself. Harrison won't let you walk away again." Her chest twisted. Memories of Kandahar flashed, Vega at her side, covering her flank, whispering encouragement when exhaustion clawed at her bones. Now his voice was a weapon. 1 minute, screamed. The next wave hit harder, through the door. White light, deafening crack. Sarah forced her body through the blindness, instincts carrying her. She fired blind, felt a body collapse, dropped low, swept her knife in a practiced arc. When her vision cleared, 2 more lay still. Madison was breathing hard, blood streaking her temple, but still on her feet. "Transfer complete," cried. She yanked a hard drive free, clutching it to her chest. Sarah grabbed her arm, time to move. But before they could, Vega's silhouette filled the doorway. Rifle lowered, but eyes locked on hers. "Sarah," his voice was steady, almost pleading. "Don't do this. Hand me the drive, walk away. For once in your life, walk away." Her pistol aimed squarely at his chest. Her voice was low, breaking against the years between them. "You left us in Kandahar. You buried me with your lies, and you want me to walk away." His jaw flexed, his eyes steel but with a flicker of something human. Regret, guilt, she couldn't tell. "This isn't about us," he said. "It's bigger than both of us. You can't win against." Sarah's finger tightened on the trigger. For a split second, the weight of choice hung between them. Betrayal, loyalty, old ghosts. Whispered urgently behind her, "Sarah, we have to go." And she knew she couldn't hesitate, not now. Her shot cracked the air. But it wasn't at Vega. It was at the ceiling light above him, plunging the hallway into sudden shadow. "Move," she barked, dragging and Madison through the secondary exit had revealed earlier. They fled into the tunnels beneath the annex, the hard drive clutched tight, Vega's shouts echoing behind them. And for the first time in 6 years, Sarah felt the war roar back to life. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was personal. How far can you run when the people hunting you on the ground beneath your feet? The tunnels beneath the annex were narrow, stale with old dust and the hum of forgotten utilities. Sarah led the way, pistol raised, every step calculated. Behind her clutched the hard drive like a lifeline. Madison covered the rear with precise bursts of breath, and Turner, now armed with a borrowed shotgun, moved with grim determination. Their boots echoed softly on concrete, but Sarah heard something louder, the ghost of Vega's voice still ringing in her ears. "You can't win against." Her jaw tightened. She'd heard those words before in Kandahar in a different form. "It's not your fight, Reed. Stand down." Orders meant to cage her, lies meant to bury her. Not this time. They surfaced in a forgotten stairwell that spat them out near the campus power plant. The building loomed dark, its smokestacks cutting into the night sky. Sarah motioned for silence, scanning the perimeter. "Clear," she whispered. Turner wiped sweat from his brow, his shotgun heavy in his hands. "We can't keep running like this. My officers are scattered. The troopers won't touch this without a warrant, and Harrison's got half the state in his pocket." Madison's eyes flicked to Sarah. "What about contacts from your service days?" Sarah shook her head sharply. "Anyone I trusted then either buried me or's long gone. We can't call for cavalry. We are the cavalry." Trembling but resolute, lifted the drive. "Then we need to get this out, somewhere safe, somewhere can't touch." Where? Turner asked. Hesitated, then said, "There's a server farm in D.C. run by an old colleague. Private. Secure. If we can upload there, the data will replicate across encrypted networks. Won't be able to erase it." Sarah's stomach sank. D.C. means crossing 3 states. Harrison will have checkpoints before we hit the highway. As if on cue, Madison's phone buzzed with an alert. She glanced at it, face tightening. Too late. Local news is already reporting a violent extremist attack at the university. They're spinning us as the aggressors. By morning, every cop in this state will have your face on a bolo. His eyes widened. They're framing us. Sarah's voice was flat. Of course they are. Turner slammed his fist against the wall. That son of a... He stopped himself, breathing hard. Harrison's not just hunting us. He's rewriting the story in real time. Sarah's mind raced. Harrison had power, resources, influence. He could warp the narrative until they looked like terrorists. And once the country believed it, truth wouldn't matter. "We need proof," Sarah said. "Not just code, something undeniable, something that ties Harrison and directly to Kandahar, to Marshall, to the cover-up." Hesitated, then whispered, "There is something." 3 pairs of eyes locked on her. "In Kandahar, the servers we recovered, I kept fragments, copies. I wasn't supposed to, but I couldn't destroy them. They're incomplete, but they show the origins of the algorithm. They shows fingerprints long before they went corporate." Sarah's heart thudded. "Where?" Swallowed, "Hidden. My personal storage unit downtown, but it's risky, if they suspect." "They already suspect," Sarah cut in. "They'll hit it before dawn." Madison looked at Sarah, then Turner. "We need to move now." Downtown was a different battlefield. Neon lights, traffic, late-night noise. To civilians, it looked ordinary. To Sarah, every corner screamed ambush. They parked 2 blocks from the storage facility and approached on foot. Sarah walked point, eyes scanning rooftops, reflections in windows, the pattern of headlights. Madison shadowed her, silent and precise, almost too natural. Turner and trailed, carrying the weight of exhaustion. Inside the facility, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting sterile shadows. Led them to Unit 314, hands shaking as she keyed in the code. The door rolled open, revealing shelves of boxes, hard drives, dusty files. Sarah entered first, sweeping the corners. Clear. Went straight to a locked cabinet, fumbling with keys. "It's here," she whispered. "The Kandahar files, the fragments I couldn't let go of." She pulled out a weathered case, placed it on the table, and opened it. Inside, several encrypted drives labeled in neat handwriting. Dates, coordinates, names. Sarah reached out, fingers brushing the cold metal. The weight of ghosts pressed hard. But before she could speak, her instincts screamed. "Down," she barked, grabbing and shoving her behind the shelves just as the first shot cracked through the unit. Glass exploded. Sparks lit the ceiling. Automatic fire raked the space, deafening in the confined room. Turner fired back blindly with his shotgun, the blast echoing like thunder. Madison rolled to cover, returning fire with calm precision. Sarah's pulse slowed. She grabbed case, tucked it under her arm, and slid to the door frame, pistol raised. Shadows moved outside, 3, 4, maybe 5 men. Silencers whispering death. Her voice was calm, steady. "Vega's here." As if summoned, his voice called out, clear, cutting through the gunfire. "Sarah, enough of this. You're boxed in. Hand over and the drives. Nobody else has to bleed." Her jaw tightened. "You first." A pause. Then Vega laughed, bitter and low. Still the same, still ready to burn the world down instead of bending. Bullets shredded another shelf, papers flying. Turner cursed, slamming a fresh shell into his shotgun. "We can't hold this." Sarah's mind raced. The unit had one exit and Vega controlled it. Staying meant dying. She glanced at the ceiling. Thin panels, exposed piping, old ventilation ducts. "Up," she whispered. Madison caught on instantly, boosting herself onto the shelves. She kicked open a panel, metal groaning. Turner followed, grunting as he hauled himself up. Sarah pushed up, the professor clutching the case to her chest like a child. Gunfire shredded the shelves below as Sarah climbed last, hauling herself into the duct just as Vega's men stormed the unit. She crawled fast, elbows scraping, the air thick with dust. Behind them, Vega's voice echoed in the storage bay. "You can run, Sarah, but you can't hide forever. Harrison owns this city. He owns the narrative, and soon he'll own the future." Sarah gritted her teeth, her breath harsh in the narrow duct. "We'll see about that." They spilled out 2 blocks away into an alley reeking of garbage and rain. Turner doubled over, panting, clutched the case, shaking. Madison checked her mag, expression unreadable. Sarah stood still, chest heaving, eyes on the dark skyline. The drives in his arms were proof, but proof meant nothing if nobody lived to share it. She turned to the others, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Harrison's not just after us. He's rewriting the world, and unless we stop him, Kandahar will look like a footnote compared to what's coming." Turner straightened, his eyes burning with the grief of a brother lost. "Then we stop him, whatever it takes." Madison's gaze met Sarah's, sharp and calculating. "But he knows your weakness. Vega, if he pushes you with him, you'll hesitate." Sarah didn't flinch, not anymore. But deep inside, she wondered if that was true. Because when she pulled the trigger earlier, she hadn't aimed for Vega. She'd spared him. And that choice might be the one mistake that doomed them all. What do you do when the man who betrayed you still knows the rhythm of your heartbeat? The safe house was nothing more than a half-abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of town. Sarah had chosen it instinctively, far enough from highways, close enough to escape routes, the kind of place operators once used to vanish between missions. Inside, the air was heavy with mildew and silence. Turner sat at the kitchen table, cleaning his shotgun in slow, deliberate motions, his grief like a storm cloud over his shoulders. Hunched beside a lamp, her fingers racing over a laptop, trying to decrypt her own drives. Madison leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watchful as ever. And Sarah stood by the window, staring out at the endless dark fields, her reflection a ghost staring back at her. Her mind wouldn't stop circling Vega, his voice, his eyes in that lab hallway. He could pull the trigger. He didn't, just like she hadn't. That hesitation haunted her more than the gunfire. Turner broke the silence. "News is worse than I thought." Sarah turned. He pushed a tablet across the table. Local news played on loop, grainy footage of the firefight at the storage facility, twisted by anchors into a narrative of domestic extremists. A blurred still image of Sarah was already splashed across the screen, the headline reading, "Former Army Captain Linked to Campus Violence." Turner's voice was low, bitter. "They're painting you as the enemy, us too by association. Harrison's got this on every channel." His hands shook on the keyboard. "He's controlling the narrative like he controls the code. Edit reality until truth doesn't matter." Madison's tone was sharp. "Then we get ahead of it, leak the data, force people to see." Sarah shook her head. "Raw files won't matter if Harrison calls them fabricated. We need more, a voice, a face, something undeniable." Turner's eyes darkened. "Vega." The name hung like a shadow. Looked between them, confused. "Why him?" Sarah's voice was steady, though it scraped against her ribs. "He was there, Kandahar. He knows the truth. If we can turn him even for a moment, he could confirm what happened. Tie it all together, Kandahar, Marshal." Madison frowned. "And you think you can convince him, after everything?" Sarah's chest tightened. "I don't know, but I have to try." That night, Sarah walked alone into the fields, her boots crunching against dry soil. The stars above were sharp and cold, reminding her of desert nights half a world away. She knew he was already there. She felt him before she heard the shift of boots in grass, the low scrape of a rifle strap. "Still predictable," Vega's voice said from the dark. Sarah didn't flinch. "You followed us." "Didn't need to," he said. "You always choose the same kind of hideouts." A figure stepped into the moonlight, Vega, rifle slung low, his face carved by shadows and regret. He hadn't changed as much as she'd told herself. Same stance, same calm, the same weight in his eyes. Sarah's hand hovered near her pistol. Not raised, not drawn, just close. "You could kill me in the lab," she said. "So could you," he countered. The silence stretched between them like a wound. "Why," her voice cracked on his name, "why bury me? Why side with Harrison?" His jaw tightened. "Because I saw what happens when you don't. You think you saved Turner's men that night? Maybe you did, but you ruined everything else. Harrison had a deal. The defector, the tech, it was supposed to end the war on our terms. You blew it open." Sarah's chest burned. "So you lied, you let them bury me." "I protected you," Vega snapped, emotion breaking through. "If I hadn't, Harrison would destroyed you completely. Prison, disgrace. I gave him what he needed, and in return you walked free." Her fists clenched. "You call this free? 6 years of silence, watching everything we fought for twisted into this." His voice softened. "I kept you alive, Sarah. That's all I could do." For the first time she saw it, the fracture in his steel. Regret etched deep. But regret wasn't enough. "You're still working for him," she said coldly. "Still hunting me. Hunting kids." He didn't answer. His silence was worse than lies. Sarah's throat tightened. "You know what is. You saw it in Kandahar. You know where this leads. If you have any shred of loyalty left to me, to who we were, you'll help us." Vega's eyes locked on hers. For a heartbeat she thought he might break, might turn. Then his expression hardened. "Walk away, Sarah, please, before Harrison decides you're more useful dead than alive." He turned, melting back into the dark. Sarah stood alone under the stars, her chest heavy. She reached for him. He hadn't taken it. And for the first time in years, she let herself whisper into the night, her voice cracking like glass. "Why didn't you come with me?" The only answer was silence. Morning came with sharp sunlight through broken shutters. Finished decrypting fragments of the Kandahar files, her voice urgent as she explained. "These aren't just predictive models. They're control frameworks. In Kandahar, they tested them on populations, tracking movements, predicting resistance, identifying who might fight back before they ever lifted a weapon. The whole city was a lab." Turner's face was grim. "And now they want to scale it nationwide." Madison swore under her breath. "This is bigger than surveillance. It's preemptive suppression." Sarah's phone buzzed. Turner frowned. How that line did. But the message displayed anyway, cutting through her veins. "Press conference. Noon, Harrison, public unveiling." His hands trembled. "He's making it official." Sarah's heart sank. If Harrison went public backed by Marshall, wouldn't be a shadow project anymore. It would be legitimized, legalized, a weapon wrapped in the language of safety. "We stop him today," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the weight pressing in. Madison raised a brow. "How? He'll be surrounded by security, press, politicians. That's not a battlefield, it's a death trap." Sarah holstered her pistol, her eyes hard. "Then we make it one." The City Hall square was a theater of control. Barricades penned in reporters. Black SUVs lined the streets. Uniformed officers flanked the steps, their radios humming with encrypted chatter. And at the center of it all stood Colonel Richard Harrison in a tailored suit, flanked by Senator James Marshall. Cameras flashed. Microphones rose. Harrison's voice carried, confident and polished. "Today, we take the next step toward national security. Project will provide our citizens with peace of mind. It will identify threats before they manifest. It will ensure no soldier has to die overseas again." The crowd murmured approval. The cameras rolled. And in the shadows of a nearby rooftop, Sarah watched through a scope, breath steady, not aiming to kill, aiming to record. Her rifle was modified, camera attached, capturing everything. Turner and Madison worked the crowd below, planting doubts, whispering to sympathetic reporters ready to drop decrypted files. Sarah's eyes never left Harrison, his voice, his lies, his polished smile. And then beside him, Vega appeared. For a moment, Sarah's breath caught. His stance was rigid, but his eyes searched the crowd, scanning rooftops for her. And she realized then, he knew she was there. The question was, would he expose her? Or would he finally, after all these years, stand where he should have stood in Kandahar? What if the only way to save the truth was to put yourself in the crosshairs? From her rooftop perch, Sarah watched Harrison's press conference unfold like a performance rehearsed for years. The cameras adored him. His voice carried like gospel. The words safety, future, and freedom echoed through the square, each one twisted into something unrecognizable. Beside him, Senator Marshall nodded with the calculated approval of a man who knew his legacy would be built on fear. And just behind them, Vega stood at rigid attention, eyes scanning the crowd. Sarah's finger rested on the trigger guard of her rifle, not to fire but to steady herself. Her scope wasn't aimed at Harrison's heart. It was aimed at his mouth, recording every lie with perfect clarity. In her ear, Madison whispered, "Feeds live. You're streaming him directly to our secure channel." Turner's voice followed, rough with tension. "We've seated 3 reporters with the Kandahar files. Once you give the signal, they'll publish." Sarah's breathing slowed. The old calm wrapped around her. But this wasn't the calm before breaching a compound. This was the stillness before she set fire to the story Harrison had spent years writing. Harrison spread his arms, smiling for the cameras. "Project is not surveillance. It's protection. It is the shield this nation deserves." Sarah's whisper was steady, "Now." Madison pressed a key. Across the world, screens flickered. The polished image of Harrison froze and was replaced by fragments of Kandahar, video files, reports, testimonies buried under classified stamps, soldiers pinned down, communications intercepted, orders from Harrison himself commanding the withdrawal. And then the images of the algorithms, early, raw, ugly, but clear, code that labeled entire populations as threats. The crowd erupted. Reporters shouted questions, cameras whipped in confusion. Harrison's polished smile faltered for the first time. "What is this?" a journalist barked. "Colonel, did you order the cover-up in Kandahar?" Harrison's jaw tightened. "These are fabrications, lies, enemy propaganda." But even as he spoke, more files surfaced, decrypted drives tied directly to shell corporations, funding trails, emails, contracts, Harrison's signature, Senator Marshall's oversight. The square turned electric, panic and fury rippling through it. And then all at once Harrison's mask cracked. He slammed a hand on the podium, his voice hard. "You think you're free without control. You think you're safe without power. Isn't the future, it's the only option. Without it, this country will burn." The cameras caught every word. Sarah's chest tightened. This was it. His arrogance was the confession. But movement in her scope froze her blood. Vega had turned, his eyes locked on her rooftop, directly. For a moment, the world fell silent. He raised a hand, small, deliberate, a signal only she would see. "Go." Sarah's throat closed. For 6 years, she'd wondered if he had any loyalty left. And here in the square, under the weight of a nation's eyes, he gave her the only answer she'd ever get. He wasn't going to expose her. He was going to let her finish it. Turner's voice crackled in her ear. "We've got incoming. Harrison's security detail is mobilizing. You've got maybe 2 minutes before they shut the feed down." Sarah pulled her rifle from the scope, slung it over her shoulder and moved. Fast, down the rooftop stairs into the chaos of the square. By the time she reached the barricades, Harrison was shouting at his security, his polished veneer gone. Reporters pressed forward, demanding answers, shoving microphones at him like weapons. And then one voice cut through, Madison. Standing at the edge of the press pool, bruises still fresh on her face, her FBI credentials in her hand. Richard Harrison, you are under investigation for conspiracy, illegal surveillance, and crimes against your own soldiers. Care to respond on the record? The crowd roared, cameras surged toward her. Harrison's face twisted. He lunged toward the microphones, but security pulled him back. His image was no longer the calm architect of safety. It was rage, desperation. Sarah knew it was enough. But Harrison wasn't finished. His eyes scanned the crowd, searching, and for a moment she saw it, the flash of recognition when he spotted her. His voice was venom. Sarah Reed, the ghost of Kandahar, you think you can bury me with ghosts? You're the traitor here. The crowd turned, cameras swiveling, eyes finding her. For the first time she felt the full weight of being seen, not as a shadow, not as a ghost, but as flesh and blood. Turner's hand gripped her shoulder. We need to move, now. But Sarah stood her ground, her voice steady. You can bury a soldier, you can bury the truth, but you can't bury what you fear most, Harrison. The silence after those words was louder than any gunfire. Security surged forward, but the crowd erupted, blocking them, reporters shouting, microphones thrusting. Harrison's empire was cracking in real time, under the weight of truth he couldn't control. Hours later, they regrouped at the farmhouse. The world outside was chaos, news cycles in flames, senators denying knowledge, Harrison under federal guard, Marshall's career already collapsing. Clutched her drives, exhausted but triumphant. Turner sat heavily, eyes wet, whispering his brother's name like a prayer. Madison leaned against the wall, her badge heavy in her hand, the weight of choices already on her shoulders. And Sarah stood apart, by the window again, staring into the night. Vega was gone. She hadn't seen him after the square. She didn't know if he'd fled, been arrested, or simply vanished into the shadows again. But his hand's signal burned in her memory. Go. Maybe it was his way of atoning. Maybe it was just mercy. She'd never know. Turner's voice broke the quiet. What happens now? Answered softly. Now the country decides what to believe. We gave them the truth. Whether they hold on to it, that's out of our hands. Madison's eyes shifted to Sarah. And you, where do you go now? Sarah didn't answer right away. She thought of Kandahar, of the men she'd carried, of the ghosts she'd lived with every day since. Finally she said, I don't know, but maybe for the first time I don't have to run from it. The room fell into silence again, heavy but softer this time, not the silence of fear, the silence of something ended, something begun. Sarah stepped outside into the cool night, the air sharp and clear. She looked up at the stars, the same indifferent stars that had watched her in Kandahar, that had watched her in the parking lot, that had watched her stand in front of Harrison. Her voice was barely a whisper, carried on the wind. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And with that she walked forward, into a night no longer haunted by ghosts, but by the fragile, unshakable weight of freedom.